Hello, merry meet. So let's discuss Wicca. No, ladies and gents, not the religion, the word. Because I think that a lot of these problems that we have with the all witchcraft, all are Wicca confusion lies in the word Wicca and how it is used and its origins. Because there are some connections there that a lot of people are not aware of, and yeah, let's try to sort out that misconception. Now, a lot of people say that, no, you can call all witches Wicca because it's the origins of the word witch, sort of, but not quite. Here's the thing. There were Anglo-Saxon word that I will not even begin to pronounce because it's Anglo-Saxon and I have trouble enough pronouncing English at times. But it is something like Wicca. And that's the male form. And then you have Wicca as the female form. And it basically means sorcerer. Sorcerer and sorceress. And this word eventually became witch. It has about the same history as the Latin term magus or magus, would be closer to the Latin word, which then became magician and eventually then mage. And of course also magic and all of the other mags. It had a very similar placement. However, the word Wicca as used by the modern neo-pagan movement is not quite that. Because that is a word that has a very modern meaning and first got into use in the 1960s around neo-pagan movement. Now, it's clearly that those that decided to start using that word excuse me, were inspired by the old Anglo-Saxon word. However, the modern word has a very distinct meaning as meaning the religion of Wicca, which is one distinct witchcraft religion, and as such do not mean everybody who practices witchcraft. It basically it was Gerald Gardner, he started to refer to his religion as Wicca, with one C, Wicca. And then one of his rivals that made, what was his name? Something on C. Oh, I should know this, and I do know it, I just, sometimes names just escape me. It is not that important anyway. One of his rivals that made his own tradition, he started studying Crowley's work, but then made his own tradition. He started to refer to his followers as Wicca. And from there, various New Age magazines and such latched onto this, and Wicca and Wiccan became a household name. However, Wiccan was never an Anglo-Saxon word meaning witch. Wiccan is a completely new word that was basically made in the 1960s as neo-paganism became popular, and it does not refer to as a general word for witch or sorcerer. It is a term specifically referring to the witchcraft excuse me, allergies. The witchcraft religions surrounding Gerald Gardner and his followers and also rivals that developed those ideas around that time. And it also became popular around that time. So Well, of course, you can say there's a connection because it's clearly that Gardner was thinking about the Anglo-Saxon word Wicca when he started to refer to his tradition as Wicca. It still isn't completely the same. It would be the same as, let's say, computer. Let's use computer game. And then somebody, we know, all know what computer games is. And then 1,000 years into the future, when everybody has forgotten about it, somebody reads up on, people used to play these games, and then they make a board game and they call it Pooter Veins. And it would be completely clear for anybody studying language that they had been inspired by that word, but that word then was specific for their board game, and of course then would not refer to board games in general. As such, while you can say that Wicca can be a word that you can use to define anybody who is practicing magic, in fact not only witchcraft, but it was used for magic user in general. Wiccan and Wicca are not. It's inspired by it, but it has a completely different meaning. Therefore, it is not right to say that all witches are Wiccans, because Wicca is a word derived from Wicca, yes, but created to refer to the Wiccan traditions. So that somebody who, for example, practices traditional Italian folk magic would not be a Wiccan. Though, if you choose to use the word, you could refer to them as Wicca, which just means magic user. So, yes. You can say it's a little bit the same as I did mention Magus earlier. Well, what Magus came from was actually Persian astrologers. And then that eventually got incorporated into Latin and became a catch-all definition for all kinds of magic. Now, here it's completely, it depends on what context you use something in. Because if you look at something from a Latin, basically a Roman point of view, then magus would mean anybody who practices magic. And especially if you go into modern times when this word has developed, then magician generally means somebody who practices magic. Or a stage magician, but yeah. It is just a general catch-all term for magic. While if you refer to it in a Persian historical context, it does not mean that. It means astrologer. And you couldn't use it for a general term for astrologer either, because it refers to somebody practicing that specific form of Persian astrology. Therefore, your local astrologer is not then a magus seen from a Persian perspective. Here's the thing, even if something has derived from a word, doesn't mean that the original meaning of the word it was derived from necessarily is applicable to how the new word is used. And there's where a lot of problems arrive. So, yeah. Now, of course, a lot of the problem is also that a lot of people have never read up on the history of Wicca, or the meaning of the word. They just have this connection in the head of Wiccan, witch. It is the same thing. No, it is not. Wiccan is a specific form of neo-paganism, while witch is anybody who, depending what your definition of witchcraft is, I would say anybody who practices any form of nature-based magic. But definitions vary. And yeah, now, like I said, for me, I consider myself to be Wiccan-ish in that a lot of my practice is based around Wicca. But since I am a chaot who just tend to like the Wiccan paradigm, it wouldn't necessarily be right to call me directly a Wiccan. So I'm more a magic user. I usually just use the term occultist. But yeah. Anyway, just wanted to make a quick video about that. So, to sum it up. Yes, there was an Anglo-Saxon word referring generally to anybody who's a sorcerer. That was Witke, with Wicca as the female variation, just as you have Magus and Maga. And this word eventually became witch. In Norwegian, we have our word for witch is hex. Which comes from the High German word Hagasusa, which basically means fence rider, because it had another, it was developed from another word. Basically in German tradition, magic user, especially somebody that did nature magic, was somebody who had one foot in this world and 1 foot in the spirit world. So they rode the fence between worlds. So they were a fence rider, a Hagasusa. And this then developed into hexen, which the word hex comes from, and also the Norwegian term for witch, hex. Now, just to summarize my point again, that does not mean that's a very shamanistic idea. The original ideas around Hagasusa is a shamanistic idea. Therefore, somebody today that calls themselves a hex, that doesn't mean that they are a shaman. Nor could, because while the word has come from that, and now generally means anybody who practices any form of nature or practical magic, it doesn't have the same meaning even if the word came from that. The same way, Witke and Wicca simply meant sorcerer. And that eventually then became witch. And eventually witch got the meaning of somebody who practices low magic, as in practical magic. And then later, much later, Garrett Gardner decided to put a name on his religion, so he called it Wicca, which was clearly then inspired by Wicca. But that doesn't mean it has the same meaning as Wicca. It is not Wicca. Had he called the things Wicca and said, yes, this is just a general idea for magic user, it would be something else. It has a completely new meaning. He made the word Wicca to refer to his followers. And then another person that was inspired by him again, but eventually became his rival, started calling his followers Wiccan, which of course then was derived from the word that Gardner used, that he again had derived from Wicca. And then media catched on and Wiccan was born. But that does not have the same meaning even if it is derived for it. Therefore, Wiccan is not a general term for magic user. It is a term for somebody following that particular tradition of witchcraft. While Wicca can definitely be used as a general term for anybody who practices magic. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend using that today because it's so close in pronunciation to Wicca that people will immediately then assume you are Wiccan, as in a follower of Gardner's ideas, or at least something derived from them. So yeah, that's my little rant about that. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. Have a great day and blessed be.